Okay, here's the deal. Today on the show, I have Alex Hogrefe. He needs no introduction. Alex has had a huge impact in my life. A lot of things that I ended up doing were because of the direction that I took after discovering the blog of Alex myself. The interview went a little bit longer than usual. It's 1 hour. Alex and I have a weird sort of like internet relationship because we've been knowing each other for almost 10 years over the internet, and we have had some interactions. Then we finally met at the D2 conference a couple of years ago. So talking to him was really like catching up with a friend for me. And we talked about 45 minutes before the interview, and then we talked a little bit longer after the interview. So it was inevitable that this thing went so long. Anyway, enough of me blah 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 blah. Enjoy.
One, and we're live. Alex.
Fabio.
So happy to have you. We are acting like, oh, what a surprise.
It's hard to act.
We just been talking for 45 minutes already, and it's it is what it is. That's how usually this stuff starts. So I am so happy and excited to have you on this call it podcast, call it interview, because as far as I'm concerned, I never seen you doing anything like this online before.
Yeah. Okay. No, I don't really do this kind of stuff. I mean, you know me. I mean, what we were talking about before. Like, it's just, it is what it is. But yeah, thanks for asking me to do this. Obviously.
No, man, thank you for taking the time. It's a Sunday. People should know. Because very often what people think, they say, they just do it they don't have to work. No, we're doing it on a day off. My wife was mad at me because I didn't take her to a restaurant. I say, no, this is one time only that I'm asking for a favor. We'll go home, we'll do that, and then later I'll take you out for dinner.
It was good for me because Dunkin' Donuts, there was no one in the Dunkin' Donuts, so I got my coffee fast.
That was fast. Alex, so I don't think you need any introduction. Your work has been for years inspiring students all over the world. Every time that we would organize a workshop or something, people would call us up and say, hey, can we do something with Alex Hogrefe? And I was like, yeah, well, or like, can you do a tutorial like Alex does? And I'm like, no, that's not what I do, Simply because your work it's been there since day zero. I mean, before, we start with the interview, the blog that I had, 3D Dreaming, that, now I don't do anymore, but it became famous because of an article that I posted about you.
Yeah, no, that was one of the first one of the first interviews I ever did. Was this guy, Fabio, who keeps emailing me through my website and wants me to do an interview. I was like, all right, let's do it.
And that was like a hit. I remember everybody, writing me, and they were like, oh, we want to see more, post another tutorial. And that was good for me because I don't think that people really understood how social media worked back then. They were coming to me to see your tutorials. So, instead of coming to you.
No, I believe it.
But it was a great thing. And I remember back then you were still studying at the University of Miami, if I don't mistake.
Yep.
Yeah. Which is in Ohio, or?
Ohio, yeah. People think it's the Florida one. Yeah. It's not. It's the Ohio one. Yeah.
That was confusing also for me. And you see, all this stuff, I remember it from us talking back then because I was one of your biggest fans, Before, when I say to you, you were working for like Paul Lucas, and you were like, oh, good memory. I was like, yeah, I actually remember all that kind of stuff. I remember all the posts that you did. I remember the portfolio review that you did, how to make your portfolio. And I even made my own portfolio when I was looking for a job using your tutorials, So it's you have been a big influence in this whole community, and I'm nothing short than thrilled to have you on this show because, you have done so much for me also with the D2 conference when you came to speak. People loved it. People loved hanging out with you. It was a shame that you could not stay a little bit longer with us the whole time, to experience the whole...
Yeah.
But it was fantastic, and I'm so thankful that now you took the time to do this. I'm just gonna, I've been going on for 4 minutes now. I just wanna start asking you a couple of questions. Probably the biggest one, which is, what everybody has been asking me throughout these years. How did you start your own architecture visualization firm?
Sure. Well, again, like the office, not the website, correct? Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm partnering with my partner Andrew Hartness, and the way it worked was I was working for a smaller boutique office. So I went to school. I grew up in Ohio, moved out to Boston to work for a small office called Paul Lucas Architecture. We were about 10 or 12 people. And after, I did all the visualization for his office, but, I was doing like 3,000 pixel wide images. Like I didn't know what I was doing. I was just, doing these images for him. And after about 4 or 5 years, I started to get the sense that I wanted to move on. And I was thinking about going to a larger office and trying to work for a larger office and try to, maybe possibly set up a in-house, visualization within a larger office. But then my partner Andrew, just out of the blue, contacted me because he was working a few blocks away from where this office was at. So he contacted me. He wanted me to come work for him because he had a small office, small visualization company, and he had one other person working for him. Wanted me to come leave Paul's office and work for him. And, at that time, I was like, I never even considered that as an option. So, once he put that in my brain, I was like, maybe this is a good time to, step outside my comfort zone and try this. And after a year of working for Andrew, I realized, this is something I want to do. And we talked and we decided that we were going to end his company and we were going to start a new company with us be partners. And so that's how Design Distill got started.
Which is your company with which you do visualizations.
Correct. And, the nice thing, so what Andrew had was a list of clients already that he had been working with. And, where Andrew is really good is he's really good at visualization, but he's also really good at, talking with clients, going to their offices. He's just, on a personable level, he's just really good at creating these connections with people. Me, not so much. But where I came in was, I was good at visualization as well. I also had, I guess by that time I had somewhat of a following with my website, and I had, connections through that. So I was kind of bringing that whole world.
We're going to get to that in the next question because actually I should have started with that. But sorry. Anyway, continue.
So we just made a really good team as a whole. And, I'm much more of a, non-risk taker. I'm very careful with how I do things. Whereas Andrew, is just willing to take risk after risk. And so we are really very different people, and we're bringing to the table very different qualities, but you need that kind of push and pull, I think, to have a really successful office. And so, when we started, we were finding work, we were going through his clients, and, things were doing okay. But, now this is, we just finished our third full year, going into the fourth year now, and we are just booked out 2 months in advance the entire year. We're just, we don't have trouble finding work. And as a matter of fact, we're turning down a lot of work. And so our biggest issue now is, finding people to hire and finding good talent, not finding work. And I think that goes to us just really, both of our qualities really working well, and our company is just really healthy right now. So it's exciting times, to say the least.
Sometimes it's really like a question also a little bit of luck, but luck anyway doesn't come if you don't do stuff, And to me, to you, my next question is, you have done, your blog. That was the thing that launched you, at least launched your image online. And the sad thing looking at your blog is that I spend a lot of time on social media because this is my job, but I don't see anybody else doing this anymore,
Sure.
like sharing the knowledge, gaining so much, information and organizing it and presenting it in such a pristine way. Whereas, you have done it, there was no money involved, you were not forced doing it. And at the end is what turned out to be your biggest investment, I would say, at least.
Oh, absolutely.
Get it.
Absolutely. And, you're right. It's the reason why I think a lot of people don't do it is it's tough because, it's one thing to create tutorials every week. When I first started the blog, I was doing it every week or every 2 weeks. It's one thing to do that for a few months. It's another thing to do it for how long have I been doing it now? For years and years and years. It is incredibly difficult to stay consistent and keep doing it. And, I tried, it wasn't started for the money. It was more of like I had all these ideas and I needed to organize them somehow. And I also wanted to have some sort of online presence, not necessarily, I didn't want to create a tutorial website, but I just wanted to have a place on the internet that, people could go to. And so I used my website as a way to almost take notes for myself to like experiment and whatnot. And so it became kind of this thing that was just my own like sketchbook, if you will. But then, once I started having a lot of people following me, what advantage that gave me was there was this pressure to kind of keep doing it. So there was times, there was many years, there was months where it's like I had so many things going on in my life. It was so difficult to try to kick out a post in the middle of all of it. Like kids being born, I was writing posts at the hospital. How sad is that? But like, there's a pressure, from having a large audience to kind of keep me doing it. So it's been good. It's forced me to keep practicing. Obviously, in the past year or so, now I'm like posting every 3 weeks, if that. And there's not as many tutorials because it's just timing-wise, it just requires so much time. And now that I have a company, I have kids, family, a house, all this kind of stuff, it's becoming more and more difficult. So I get why there's not a lot of people doing it, but at the same time, it has been like my biggest asset in terms of doing this professionally. So it's, it is what it is.
Dude, I remember you always being very humble about this, although, there were a lot of people like calling themselves experts, in the field. And every time that we would talk, I always had the feeling that you were doing it, you were really good at it, but you had no freaking clue what was happening around your stratosphere, And
yeah.
In a way, your career kind of reflects that as well, because you had a job for how long before going and making your own office?
So 4 years ago was when I stopped working as an architect and started doing visualization full time. We were talking earlier. I didn't even know this was something I could do full time. And going even further back to what we were talking about earlier is I'll be the first to say I don't think my work was great. Even when I was doing the website, it was not stuff I thought was great.
Okay, let me just stop you. Reality check. At the D2 conference, the last year we had some people from MIR, or it was the year before, and then I told them, well, we had Alex speaking at the conference. Alex Hogrefe? And people were like, designers from MIR. Of course, everybody has used these tutorials to do the water, the reflections.
So
this was coming from MIR. So if your work was not good enough...
No, but my point is, I don't think my work was great, but I was the only one that was just talking about brutally simple ideas. And that's kind of another reason why I started throwing this stuff online is the only stuff you could find online for tutorials at the time when I started the website was just the super heavy, dense, like V-Ray settings, like going deep into the settings, using these kind of 3D lights and stuff. And I just was not interested in that. And, so like my tutorials were just brutally simple, painting, in-light, all very Photoshop heavy, because that's what a lot of students care about, is kind of the Photoshop side of things. They're interested in 3D settings, but not super dense, thick, heavy settings. And, the other thing too is like a lot of my tutorials at the very beginning, I wasn't using masks. I wasn't using like proper Photoshop techniques. I was using eraser tools. I was destroying my Photoshop layers. But it was all about being super simple and just getting a very basic idea across. And then, when you had time, you can start to implement like smart objects and masks and that kind of stuff later on in the process. But it's all about just creating nice images as quickly as you could. And I think that's what resonated with people. And that's why I think the website was successful, not, having these perfectly beautiful images like Mirror creates and Lexicon and that kind of stuff.
This is a very good point. I mean, keeping it simple, it's always pretty much the key with everything, right?
Yeah. And especially with, people just starting out, again, like my website is very popular with students, and it makes sense just because, they're being thrown so much information from so many different directions in school. They don't have time to invest, every waking moment in learning visualization. They just need some like bare knuckle information to just kick out some images that make their project look better than the kid next to them. That's what a lot of them care about. And so in going through school, that's how I was too. And, especially with me and my background, I grew up doing, painting, drawing, like that's what I knew. And so then when I got into architecture school, I was doing all my project visualization by hand. I wasn't using the computer. I was one of the last people in my class to get a laptop. And so I was once I got the laptop, I was not interested in going straight into 3D settings. I just wanted to be able to create images similar to what I was doing by hand, so that's why I naturally went to Photoshop. And when I was teaching myself how to do visualization, I wasn't going to architecture visualization websites. I was going to graphic design websites and learning how they were using Photoshop. And then I brought those techniques over to, what I was doing in school. And so that's, again, like I think I approached it a little bit differently. And there wasn't resources like there are today, in terms of what we do. So it was just like I was just fighting to kind of figure out a lot of this stuff. So.
This is also interesting. Okay, then now that you have clients and in a way you kind of have to optimize a little bit better the workflow, did things change in a way? I mean, you started with, if I don't mistake, SketchUp. You were doing some stuff in Rhino, but then importing it into SketchUp.
Yeah, and like, again, even in our office right now, we're using SketchUp and V-Ray and Photoshop. So our theory is, keeping things as simple as possible and letting the artistry kind of be the priority. And it's like so many people in our industry say it's not about what tools you use, it's how you use them. And so that's kind of what we go off of. Is we're a very Photoshop heavy visualization office, and a lot of our clients, that actually makes a lot of sense because they're coming to us with very little information. They're coming to us with just massing. We have to fill in this information really quick. And we're not a huge office. We're 7 people big. So we don't have the resources to just throw a ton of people onto modeling and model an entire city. Photoshop allows us to fill in that information really quickly. And we just, our clients come to us because we're a little more, we're not photoreal, but we're very emotional with our images. And that's why they come to us. And so, SketchUp it has its limitations, but it does everything that we need it to. And there's still developing it. V-Ray's putting in a ton of energy into developing V-Ray for SketchUp. And so, we're now using Deadline with V-Ray for SketchUp. We're using a lot of these other tools that we need to run our farm and whatnot. So I'm less concerned about the tools and more concerned about just what the end product is. So.
Tell me one thing, because for sure, people will write you after watching this even more than they already do.
Sure.
Say that somebody wants to work for you. What are the things that you look for in a candidate, a brand new candidate, or old designer, whatever?
I mean, that's been the biggest learning curve, running an office is figuring out how to hire people. We made a lot of mistakes very early on because we were thinking we needed people with technical skill and that we could train the artistry. And that is completely reversed. And now when we're hiring, we're looking for people that are artists, and we'll deal with training the technical side once they get here. And so that's where we're at now, is when we get portfolios, we don't even really care about what software they use, because obviously SketchUp is super easy to learn. V-Ray is pretty easy to learn. Photoshop, there's an expectation that if you want to do this full time, you know Photoshop. So when we get portfolios and whatnot, we're looking for, do they know about lighting? Do they just kind of have that sensitivity that artists have? Are they showing when they have photography in their portfolio, is their photography nice, compositionally? We're looking for that kind of stuff, because that stuff we're realizing is very hard to train. The technical side is very easy. And so the last few hires, that's what we did, and we're extremely happy with where things are going now. And so I think we're building up a really good team with our office.
It's very interesting that you say this, because very often what one of the biggest questions that we get asked during the interviews at during the D2 conference and all that kind of stuff is, how do you build a successful team? Mm-hmm. And it's very simple to say pay your artists more, but I really don't think this is the key. There is just so much more to this topic. You said you have a team of 7 people, right?
Yep.
How long have you guys been working together, more or less?
Each year we're growing a little bit more. So when we first started out, it was just Andrew and I and 2 other people. And then just over the course of the year, we've hired more people. We've lost a few people, but we just hired 2 more people in November. So we're up to 7 now. We have one guy who is just technically really, really good. He can solve any of our technical issues, which is just a huge asset for a small office like us. Jay, he's really good. And then we have another guy, Michael, who's been working with us for the past couple of years. And he is now just a Photoshop king. He can just take any image and turn it into a beautiful image. And that's really important, because before it was Andrew and I were kind of doing a lot of the final finishing touches. And so now our goal is to try to get everyone up to the same level. We're not really designating this person as only doing 3D and this person only doing Photoshop. Everyone that we hire, kind of handles all aspects of an image. And that's important too, because we want people to be able to take an image from start to scratch, from start to finish, and take ownership over images. So that's important. But also we're a small office, so sometimes we just need a ton of resources in 3D modeling. Other times we just need a lot of resources in Photoshop, and so we want to be able to shift people as we need them. And like I said, I think the people we have right now, everyone's just well versed in all aspects of image making, and it's allowed us to become very, very efficient too. So the past couple of years we've been doing over 300 images a year, and for a small office,
that's really a huge amount.
Yeah.
And also, I know, because you already told me before, you guys have established a very good, very healthy work culture where you don't do weekends, you don't do overtime. This is also a very big achievement for an industry that this seems to be one of the biggest issues.
Yeah, and that's very important, for Andrew and I, just from our own experiences of working in architectural offices. I think we both had bad experiences with that. And so when we started this office, we made the decision to never work overtime. I mean, there's situations maybe once every few months where, we need to stay a little bit later on 1 or 2 days, but 95% of the days we're work until 5 o'clock and everyone leaves. We don't work weekends. And that usually means turning down work, but we put a high value on work-life balance. So that's been really crucial. But also, here in the States, I think it's still it's starting to change, but a lot of people don't realize they can do this as a career. And so a lot of our people that we're hiring were either moving over from architectural offices or, they're graduating and we're saying, hey, instead of working for an architecture office, come work for us. And so, we give good benefits, but, these other aspects, we're hoping we can, get, better candidates to work at our office, but also retain them. Like the biggest thing too is we put all this time into training. We don't want them to leave after 6 months. We want to keep them here as long
Of course.
But yeah, that's, and just, especially for me, just talking about myself, being able to leave at 5 and go home and spend time with the family and then, work on my website and that kind of stuff is incredibly crucial to not get burnt out and that kind of stuff. So far, we've been doing good. It's tough turning down work because of it, but, I think in the end, everyone's much happier in our office because of it.
Yeah, I think as I already told you, balance is a lot more important than people realize.
Yeah.
I've also found myself in that situation, so I can only agree with you. Now, there was something that I wanted to ask you. Now I forgot, but it's we have done this already so much, like even in the past. I mean, the interactions that we have had in the past, I really think that in a way, my career has moved to what it is now, also because of the work that you did in the very beginning, and it's not only about the technique, it's about the fact that sometimes you realize that there are things related to this industry that people, for instance, underestimate, like the new students having studied architecture that don't know that they can do this for a living. So now my question to you is, since I've been a teacher and I've been teaching at the university, I would be very interested myself to know from a professional like you, what could be fixed in terms of education to better prepare guys that one day want to do visualization coming out of the University of Architecture. What can be done better from the side of the teaching, from the side of the learning, also for the students themselves, in terms of software, attitude, all this kind of stuff. What do you think?
I mean, I'm already starting to see this with a lot of universities, but it's not necessarily focused on visualization, but just focused on this idea that when you graduate, you don't have to go be an architect. Like I'm seeing a lot of schools starting to push this idea, and especially in a lot of graduate programs, there's classes that are just discussing all the other things you can do within the architectural field without necessarily being an architect. And, as I was telling you, we had some Harvard students come by, and one of them stayed after they came by to our office to just kind of look at what we're doing and learn about what we're doing. And one of them stayed afterwards and wanted to intern here and was interested in doing this professionally after they graduate. And I was telling you, it's like, 5 years ago, that would have never happened. And so I think these schools are starting to kind of push this idea that there's other avenues you can go other than architecture. But in terms of visualization, there's the schools I went to, they didn't even have visualization courses. I mean, there's like the stuff when you first start school where you're doing ink on Mylar drawings, and there's like these fundamental classes that you take. And then there might be one or two classes that teach you about Photoshop, and that might teach you about V-Ray, or it'll be a 3D modeling class, and like the last 2 days of that class will be talking about a rendering software. So schools really don't take this seriously. I think they still put a lot of they still rely on the student to just figure it out themselves and teach themselves. And I do quite a bit of lectures and workshops at schools around the United States, and every school I go to, I tell the faculty there, start getting more courses in visualization. And just because, marketing is such a big part of what architecture is, and being able to kind of convey your idea, not just with words and floor plans and sections, but actually, telling the story in a better way. I don't understand why visualization is not a bigger part of architecture. So there have been one or two schools, Philadelphia University I went to, like a lot of energy was being put into visualization. So there are some schools that are doing this, but the majority of them just don't put any energy into the visualization side of it.
I think also one of the issues is that a lot of people that are in a position of like directing the courses, they are in a way, so close-minded and old sometimes that they see it as a gimmick and not as a consistent part, I mean, I didn't finish my course that long ago. I graduated in 2008 or 9, I think. I started to study very late, so but at that time the question that a lot of my teachers were always asking was, where are the sections, where are the floor plans, whilst I was learning all these 3D tools, and I was like, I'm describing the space better by showing it to you with a picture, with a visualization, and you're still asking me, how does this project work, in a section or in a floor plan? And to be honest with you, I still struggle very much nowadays to understand their point of view, because 3D gives you so much more understanding,
Sure. Yeah, and obviously it takes more energy to kind of, everything's being, here, at least here in the States, everyone's moving to Revit now. So everyone's already starting to design their entire project in 3D from the very beginning. What I'm seeing now in a lot of schools is almost all the studios, their entire project is in Revit, and then they just go and click render within Revit. And so all their projects are starting to look the same. And my fear now is there's no, back in the day when so much stuff was being hand rendered, there's a lot of more artistic license being taken by students, and like, it's just beautiful, gorgeous work. And then, when it started to go in the digital direction, there's still a lot of artistic license being taken, but now everything's just starting to be homogenized into these Revit renderings. And you go to these studio reviews and just look at the projects, and they all look the same. And so, I don't know, it's almost making the case that schools need to get into visualization even harder now than they did before, because of what Revit's doing to a lot of these projects.
I'm 100% with you. I remember it was the same when ArchiCAD came out. A lot of universities started to adopt ArchiCAD as a software for modeling. Revit came in a way as a mass utilization tool a lot later than ArchiCAD, at least in the German, Austria, Germany, Switzerland region. And this was a very big problem, because you would go to a studio review, 30 projects, they would use the same window component, the same door component, all this kind of stuff that, kind of equalize and then you would talk about the idea in showing the project to the students, because I also tutored and helped people during their graduation project, and you would just realize that there was no introspective speculation when coming to presenting their project.
Yeah.
And I found that incredibly sad, And I was like, how is that possible? There is so much information on the internet that you can look at and use it to make better projects.
Right. No, the argument can be made that there's so much information out there now that no one really knows where to go to to figure this stuff out. And, every website's kind of explaining something a little bit different and do it this way versus this way. And I think a case could be made that there's confusion on how best to do this. It kind of goes back to when I started my website. There wasn't a lot else out there, and so it kind of, even if I wasn't necessarily describing the best way to do something, there was just like, okay, but he's making decent images this way, so I'm just going to do this because there's not really anything else for me to go look at. Whereas now you go on YouTube and it's just video after video after video covering every little topic here and there, and it's just, I think it can be overwhelming. And now these students, they're doing their projects in Revit, and instead of spending hours and hours going through tutorials on YouTube, it's much easier to just click render in Revit and just kick out an image and, throw sun glare in Photoshop and present it,
I'm just gonna say something stupid. It's gonna sound super stupid, so, be patient. I'm just wondering when there's going to be some sort of cultural shift, when finally, the stuff that influencers, people that really put the information as it is and as it should be, like you, okay? You have a website that I swear to God, when I was doing reviews in universities in Slovakia, Germany, Austria, Italy, I would go and look at over the laptop of a student that I was following, and they had your tutorials open. They had the tutorials from Mike Pryor, the guy that worked with me on 3D Dreaming doing the grasshopper stuff. I'm wondering when, the whole community will actually start to acknowledge that this is actual knowledge and kind of bring it as an example of the stuff that needs to be taught, instead of having this fake sort of studio dynamics where each single tutor comes up with super abstract things that have nothing to do with the actual professional work, and there is no direct comparison with okay, what we are doing, what the internet has, that has been used, and we know it's commercial. You know what I'm trying to say?
I mean, obviously that's a tough question to answer. I think with a lot of things, things just have to keep getting worse and worse until there's this big paradigm shift. So I think at a certain point, the Revit renderings are just going to get so bad that universities are going to realize, all right, we got to start doing something about this. And they're going to start creating curriculum-based, or at least setting aside a certain portion of the curriculum to this aspect. And then I think, the other side of it is, these offices like Mirror and Lexagon and Brick Visual and all these really, well-known visualization companies, they're already big, but they're going to start getting integrated into discussions along with architects. And, it's just, I think things are already there, but they probably need to get a little bit more worse before people start taking this really serious. But
how many more Tide Pods do students need to eat in order for us?
This isn't to shit on students. Again, there's just so much information being thrown at them, and it's hard to make the decision on where to invest your time. And the thing is, Revit, I don't know if you've ever used it in an office setting, but it is dense. you can't even really learn it in school. You have to learn it in an office because an office uses it in a completely different way than you do at school. But like it's such a dense program to, that requires so much energy and resource in itself. And it bothers me too because Revit forces, this is kind of getting away from visualization, but I say this whenever I go to
I think it's very close to the discussion that we're having. So
it forces you into a certain amount of detail right away. It forces you to start thinking about windows and doors and walls and floor slabs. Whereas when you work in programs like Rhino and SketchUp and other software, you're thinking more conceptually. You're thinking more sculpturally, and so it's a problem. And I've had discussions with so many faculty at these schools about, they shouldn't be pushing Revit in the studio. They should be pushing Rhino and SketchUp and these other programs so that students aren't being forced to think. Hold on, my computer's doing something weird. So that students aren't being forced to, just narrow down their thinking into these very specific ideas. So I don't know. It's just
what you just said. It's a very big truth. I've had this conversation 1,000 times already. With a lot of teachers and even with the students, because in a way students also complain about the fact that they say from a design point of view it's understandable and there should be some sort of like course where we take a design and we learn how to detail it, for instance using a software like Revit, which would help us then creating a parametric workflow between our ideas and what the project should look like.
Right.
But at the end of the day, I think that this is where then you lose architecture, because architecture should still work as a sort of like human component to the built environment, where I think visualization really helps communicating ideas. Details that belong to architecture are for those who understand architecture, and this is not necessarily the mass.
Right.
It's like designing for other designers. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's not. And again, I don't want to get like a bunch of emails or comments. It's not. It's not to say they shouldn't be teaching Revit, because students when they graduate they need to have Revit on their resume in order to get hired at all these places. I'm just saying they shouldn't be pushing it in studios. They should be teaching it as another class that this is just what the software. Because it's like I said, once you start using it in an office, it's a completely different beast, and you use it in a completely different way, and that's where you learn how to use it. And so it should be put on the offices that are hiring to teach this stuff properly. So that's my stance on it. But
no, it's fine. I think I agree with you like 100%. And I say that all the time. It's people will understand that we're saying that Revit is not good. This is just how polarized the internet is. We cannot do anything about this. So don't worry about it. I understand 100% what you're trying to say. This was already a conversation that I was having. I had a teacher, one of my old teachers, that was working at Copy Mablau. Now, Copy Mablau is a great office, and they do a lot of work, which is sculptural work. And, they need people that can do Revit. But Copy Mablau doesn't use Revit for design. They use other software that allow them to have major freedom of communication, because at the end, what you're doing by designing a project, you're also communicating an idea. This is the reason why when we talk about visualization and for students to learn more about visualization, it's not necessarily about making the prettiest picture, but to communicate an idea rather than, doing, because, for instance, taking your portfolio as an example, you had different visualization styles and techniques for different purposes. And I think that, this is an important aspect also of visualization, because, nowadays you talk about visualization, everybody has photorealism in their head, when actually, for instance, your office is very much an office where people come because they know that they want to communicate some emotions with their images. And I think this is where you guys are masters, you know?
Yeah,
I mean,
and like going back to the portfolio and like the range of styles, like that is getting lost so quickly at schools. You know, there are still, I follow a lot of schools on Instagram because, you know, the schools post like all the best student work. You know, there's still the schools that are doing really cool stuff, but like, you know, it's becoming more and more rare. And you know, again, like when stuff was done by hand, just like the range of style and like emotion and color and stuff that was used, it's all just slowly being homogenized into this idea of everything just needs to look photoreal and how can we get the photoreal. And like you know, a lot of my energy now on my website just goes to kind of pushing back on that idea and bringing back into the spotlight floor plans and sections and just weird stuff, because that's the stuff that I like looking at. That's the stuff that interests me, and that's the stuff that I hope doesn't slowly die a slow death, you know, in schools and in architecture.
and of course, you know, the way you, for instance, show how to draw these things is very much emotional in a way compared to, you know, a dry technical section or a dry floor plan, you know. And I think it's, as I said, you know, this is also visualization. We forget that, you know, this word includes a lot of like subreddits, call them that way.
Right.
I remember there were some, dude, we're getting so long overtime with this. You tell me when you need to stop because I know that
I can
your
go all
time
day.
is precious.
Let's just go all day. Just tell me when you stop recording, and then we'll just.
When my computer runs out of
Yeah.
space on the hard drive. No, there is. I remember you doing in your portfolio for like your first year, first or second. There were a lot of like hand drawings made from a
Yep.
trip to Rome or something. You went to Italy, if I don't mistake.
Oh wow, you're talking about an old portfolio. No, I went to Turkey.
Turkey, okay, because
Yep.
there were like some sort of sculptures and drawings of like buildings that looked really like old style.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what portfolio you're talking about. But yeah, I took a trip to Turkey in grad school. I spent 4 weeks there and did a ton of sketching like around the country. So that's probably what you're referring to.
Yes, because I remember that these drawings they were then mixed together with projects that you have done in 3D. And I think, you know, going back to students and how they should present their work, I remember this was very powerful back then, at least for me, because it really showed that, you know, you were showing more skills at the same time, you know, in one shot. And I remember there was like this 3D stuff that you were doing, axonometric, very nicely drawn with all these sketches on the side. And I'm now trying to look for it, but probably I'll have to spend the afternoon googling your old portfolio. But anyway, it's just that, you know, I wanted to put it as an example because, you know, probably some of the younger students might not know about your website, because
Well,
I think.
Well, I was going to say too. That reminds me. I won't say the name, but someone emailed me from Europe, you know, saying they wanted to put in a bunch of these hand drawings in their portfolio, but their professor was telling them no because no one cares about the hand drawings anymore. And he was asking me how best to incorporate this, and I just like sat back on my chair. I'm like, is that really what's being taught now? Like, that's such an awful thing to think about. Like, of course you want to put the hand, you want to show the process. You want to show like how you arrived at this final design. Like, you know, a lot of my portfolio volume before that, the last one that I just put out, like I don't have any hand stuff done in there, but I think this next one, portfolio 5, I'm planning on going back and just bringing back hand drawn stuff in there. just because it's such a crucial part of the design process. Sketching is still such an important part of my design process, and to ignore that whole kind of aspect of things. But it also just shows you're a human. You know how to do human things. Like you don't know. It's not just about moving a mouse and creating something digital. There's a human emotion involved with this.
It's funny that you say this because sometimes I follow a couple of artists on social media and people really, sometimes comment like, you've been drawing this by hand? And it's like, I don't know if people think that, Photoshop is some sort of magic that where things happen by themselves. But on the other hand, I remember me being a student. There was a friend of mine, Jonathan Evans, very skilled 3D designer. You probably met him at the D2 conference as well.
Probably.
Anyway, and back then he was doing 3ds Max, and we had no clue. Like, we did not even know what a polygon was, And I was like, yeah, okay, but you're not modeling this by yourself, right? And he was like, what do you mean I'm not that's what the software does. It models stuff. And I guess that, sometimes then people really do start to detach themselves so much from one of those skills that they completely lose it, and they think that it's not possible for somebody to be so good at drawing by hand.
Sure. Yeah. No, I don't use a tablet in Photoshop. And I know a lot of people don't realize that and freak out when they hear that. I still use a mouse.
I remember that you said it sometimes.
And it's weird because, I drew a lot when I was a kid, like to the point that my mom was like finding clients for me, like when I was in high school and I was drawing these people's, children and their dogs and their cats and stuff. They were hiring me to do this. Like I drew a lot. And then once I got into Photoshop and I started, I had to force myself to start using the mouse and get used to that because I didn't know anything about Wacom tablets or anything like that. I started, getting used to the mouse and getting used to the undo button, which like changed my life, and to the point that I really going back and trying to draw like just a full drawing of like a person. It's so hard for me to do. Like I still love to sketch and that kind of stuff, but to do like a full-fledged hand drawing, like it's hard now that I have Photoshop and the mouse, to the point that like I don't know if I'll ever move to a tablet. I feel like I should, but I just haven't yet.
It's otherwise you don't look professional, man.
Yeah.
Dude, listen, I want to ask you one thing that it's, totally random.
Sure.
But you have done professional sports during your time at university, right?
No.
Weren't you like playing ball or something?
No, like I played a lot of sports in high school. I golfed a ton. I considered playing golf in college, but I ended up not doing it because architecture just requires too much time. But
I don't know if I had this conversation with you already once.
Must have been someone else. Yeah.
Yeah, probably. No, because you're freaking tall. Like,
yeah, I'm 6'4". Like, yeah, I can get why you would think that, I guess, but no. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I love my basketball. I played a lot of basketball in high school. Golf, ran track. Kind of, where I grew up, it was in a very small town, so every kid played in like 4 sports. That was just what you did. You didn't pick one sport and just devote all your time to it. So, but no professional sports.
Dude, listen, we have been pulling this for 52 minutes. It's I'm so sorry that this is taking so long, but it's first of all, it was extremely nice, to talk to you again after so long.
For sure.
I feel like we've been friends forever because we started talking to each other in a time where people started to make friends over the internet, and I do consider you a friend because of the stuff that you've done for me. So even if we're not friends in the more traditional meaning of the word, I still do consider you a friend. But
well, if it makes you feel any better, my wife knows when I say Fabio, she knows who I'm
Your wife's name is Kim, right?
Yes.
Well, pass her my regards. It's Sunday, so tell her sorry from my side.
No, that's
Now
fine.
go and spend a little bit of time with your family. One last thing.
Yeah.
If a student comes to you and says, listen, what can I do one day to be a better designer and to get a job possibly in one of your offices? And I ask you this question because of all the work that you have done as a student, whilst you were a student, with your portfolios and with your website and everything, which was very related to students.
Sure. Again, like, that's a tough question. It's a broad question, but it's, I think it's about studying not the technical side of things, but spending time studying the things that aren't so physical, like light, studying photography. Like, if you want to learn how to create nice images or just be better at presenting your work, don't let the first impulse be to go start learning 3D Studio Max. Not that you shouldn't learn 3D Studio Max, but let the first impulse be to go study some photography or study some paintings and look at how they do lighting and look at, how, wide-reaching lighting can be. Like, starting off, you think there's a daytime and there's a nighttime and then there's interior lighting. And boom, you have all the lighting. When in reality, it's unending amount of ways you can light a scene in an image, and how does light work, how does shadow work, how does texture work. Kind of go in that direction first and kind of become really comfortable with that side of things. And then I think that will help to inform you how best to approach the 3D side of things once you have a clear idea of how you want to go visually. So, and then once and we can tell when people come apply to work for us, we can tell who those people are that just have that sensitivity to that kind of stuff. And that's what we're looking for. So.
This is golden, man. This is golden. I really like. Also, I find myself looking at you talking, and I'm like, it brings back good memories, I really hope that somebody will be inspired by this interview to kind of do the same, what you did for the community, and start, something new, bring a brand new perspective. I mean, it's a generation ago that you started this. It's now almost 10 years, I guess, right?
Yeah.
It is. I mean, when did we start talking? 2008, 2009?
Yeah, 2008, 2009. I think it's 2009. Yeah, man.
So it's almost 10 years.
I've been doing this for that long. So you can see, like, I'm just slowing down, slower and slower every 3 weeks now. But I also want to say, too, if people are in the Boston area, like, our office is always open. All you got to do is just, like, message me on Facebook or send our office an email, and we'll give you a tour. Like, that happens a lot now. Every few weeks we have someone just coming by and we just give them a tour and stuff. So.
This is a very generous offer, and I really hope that somebody will take you on this. And it's also something that happened to me in the very beginning of my career when I went to visit Mir.
Yeah.
I went to the office in Bergen, and I was there because I was working. And I called them up and I said, hey guys, I'm a very big fan of your work. Can I come and see you? And the guy say, no, we're too busy, and hung up on me.
No, I mean, we're always busy, but, like, I don't know. I don't know. It gives us pleasure to, like, know that there's people that appreciate what we do and are excited to see what we do. So we always just make time for it. It's fun for us.
No, it's honorable that you do this, and I really hope that people would take they would take the chance, because if you were able to inspire people like me, even though it was an online thing, hopefully you can do that for somebody else and really give them a direction and help them figuring out things that otherwise will take them too long to figure out.
Absolutely.
Alex, listen, I don't want to take any more of your time. I'm just gonna stop the recording right now. We're just a little under an hour.
Okay.
Plus, we've been speaking for 40 minutes previous to that. I guess we have done enough for this time, okay?
Sure.
Dude, thanks a lot for taking the time. I'm gonna put a link to your website, although I'm pretty sure that people know it. I will stop the recording and then I'm going to say goodbye to you in person, okay? All right, thanks a lot again, man.
Yeah, and thanks for talking with me too. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, man. Thank you.